We're
Welcome to the
live.
Backpack Show.
We did
We're
it.
live. We did it.
Carrie
You
is
from the
sharing.
road.
Yeah, I'm on the road, so I apologize a little bit if it's a little bit off, but I'll try to make it work. And of course, Carrie is an incredible button pusher in my absence.
But I get used to not pushing the ones you like to push because then we're like, on top of each other. Like if you try to push mine, I push yours. So that's never any
Right,
good.
don't push my buttons.
No,
Hey,
I don't push your buttons.
I noticed that there's some people here.
We're talking with Mark Zides. First is Castos.com makes it really easy to do an audio podcast if you're interested in trying it. Castos.com makes it stupid easy. So get yourself a podcast going. If you would like a domain to promote it, consider a .online domain. You can get that at cbrogan.me/online. Use the code Chris in all caps to get that domain for just under $1. If you want a cool video show like this one, try StreamYard. I remember all these people used to ask me to co-host their show. I was like, you just need StreamYard, cbrogan.me/StreamYard. And if you want to use a better search engine, try presearch.com. I love the story of how it was founded. It was because the other big monolith was pushing around the little guys. And so Presearch started to give everybody a fair shake. You also can earn crypto rewards, but only if you're logged in. There, we did them all.
We did it. So we have Mark Zides today. Carrie, let's talk a little bit about what we're doing.
So Mark Zides wrote a book called The PACE Process for Early Career Success. And it's essentially focused on Gen Z and some of the people who are new to the workforce, millennials. But the lessons in it apply equally to everybody who's trying to launch right now. Because, a lot of people shifted careers during the pandemic. They're trying something completely different. Some of them upskilled or reskilled. So this is going to teach you what you need to know to succeed upon launch.
And we're not going to leave this to just the Gen Z crowd. We're going to ask you older people to figure it out too.
You older people.
Hi everyone, Tim Kitzer from NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, welcoming you to The Backpack Show. Your hosts, Chris Brogan, Carrie Gargone, Boom Shakalaka.
Buenos dias, Coach Woodard.
Hey, Coach Woodard. Hey, Leslie.
So let's do the thing. I'm going to bring out Mark.
You grab Mark. Hey, Mark, how are you today?
Hey guys, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
So I'm thinking that this whole initiative started because you have kids and they were like living at home and you were getting sick of it. So you wanted to help them succeed in their career. Am I wrong?
You're pretty close. Yeah. So I got 3 of them and 2 are Gen Zers and one's, still in high school, but certainly the message is based on learning from their friends, their parents, clients that I work with, and want to write this book, and hopefully it provides some advice for some of these quote unquote kids.
What were you noticing that was different about them versus the way that, like, say, I'm a Gen Xer, so what was different from the way they were pursuing a career than what I would have done back in the day? Let's not use dates.
Yeah, so I'm a Gen Xer too. So you and I have grit and resilience, and we have thick skin and all those stereotypes, right? About certainly how Gen Xers behave in the marketplace. But the Gen Zers, for whatever reason, they have a stereotype of being soft, or the trophy generation, as they're called. And I'm sure many don't appreciate that. But when they grew up, they were protected much more than we were, and they weren't given the opportunity to fail. And a lot of that is based upon us parents trying to make sure that they were all set and protected. But as that translates now into the workforce, they don't have those skills or that sort of experience to figure out difficult situations or how to work through ambiguity, things like that. And that's what I believe. And that's some of the messaging in the book that I put in there. You got to have, this grit, you got to have the right mindset. You got to actually, figure that out, because when you were younger, in general, they didn't always figure that out.
How did everybody lose their grit, Mark? I agree with you. I think that's one of those things where, we were taught the school of hard knocks kind of way a lot. And I think that did fall off. I mean, I guess, do we blame parents? And then if so, how do we help them find it without being their parent?
Yeah. I mean, I think guilty as charged, right? I'm one of those parents that want to protect my kids and wanted them to be successful. And, certainly behaviors are created through experiences, right? So we can't necessarily unwind or undo what they've learned, in their teens or through their adolescence. But that said, when they get into the workforce, they have to, become big boys and big girls, kind of figure it out on their own and step out of their comfort zone in a way. And some of that comes from, some self-awareness. Some of that comes from EQ. Some of that comes from finding the right mentors or people that can help coach them along the way.
It can be jarring when you're going from the environment that a lot of kids have been in. It's sort of the self-selected like universe of people and things that they already like. And so asking them to transplant themselves into a completely new organization and spend like most of their day with people they don't know doing things they've never done before, it can be a little bit scary. So how do you give them a push in that direction? Like, what do they need to take that leap when they've got this like carefully curated life that they enjoy?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Carrie. It's not easy. I mean, I think this generation, both Gen Z and the Gen Ys, millennials, have it much tougher than we had, right? We grew up in a much different structure, a much different organizational sort of approach, and a lot of these young professionals are coming into the workforce now where, there's it's virtual, right? Like, for example, interviewing, we used to, back in the day, quote unquote, we used to meet someone in person, shake their hand, look them right in the eye. Our parents said, have a firm handshake. Now that doesn't happen, right? They're doing it through a Zoom. You have to figure out different social cues. You have to kind of understand, how to advocate for yourself virtually. It's not easy. So, I don't have the silver bullet to answer your question, but what I will say is, each individual is different, right? But they need to figure out the context that they're in. And what I like to say is advocate for themselves in the best way possible to build their personal brand, not in a brash way, but in a way that's much more collaborative.
One thing I see a lot, especially in the way you laid out, hey, Fred, the way you laid out PACE, the C for commitment is kind of after they've already taken an action. Meaning in my mind that you're saying you've got to really grind it out. You can't just do the thing. You have to stick with it for some amount of time. Is that why you put commitment where you did, or is it just so it could spell out the word PACE? Or tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So PACE was always a word that I've used for the last, 30 years or so. And it's one of those interesting words where you can say to a friend, or, it became, when the whole hashtag thing came up, became kind of a funny joke, hashtag PACE. And it would be, hey, keep the pace, set the pace, maintain the pace, slow down your pace. So every situation can be different, based on where someone's at. But the C in general, commit to me in the book means don't just jump to the next job, right?
Right.
You've committed to a company, an organization. They've invested in you. You hopefully are going to invest in them. And what we're seeing a lot in these young professionals is 6 months into a job, they're like, well, if I don't get a promotion, I'm going to go jump for another $5,000 or $10,000. I'd like to see, and what a lot of hiring managers would like to see, is how can you go to your hiring manager or someone in the organization and say, look, I might be a little bored with what I'm doing or what I'm hired for. Is there another role in the organization that I can move into to kind of broaden my skills or give me another opportunity? And I don't think that they think about things like that sort of holistically, of how can this organization help me develop as an individual and around my career trajectory. So what I try to coach them on in the book is just take a pause and don't just jump for the next best opportunity. Just figure it out through speaking to peers, speaking to your boss, and commit to the process in a certain way.
Cool. So a lot of your reviews on Amazon were huge, by the way, on saying that, I'm going to pass this around to my school group and all that sort of a thing. And I think that's great. How has this book been received directly by the people who are going to be getting this? Like, I feel like anytime I've ever tried to give a younger person advice, I get that awesome, polite smile. That's all I get.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if Gen Zs are reading the book, the hardcover book, right? I think what's happening and what we've learned is, we were fortunate enough, and I'm humbled that we were on Amazon's bestseller list the first week for a couple of different categories, job search and resume review and things like that. So that was super flattering. I think this book's really good. And what I've heard feedback from my network is parents love giving this book to, like, it's really hot now because it's graduation season.
Yeah.
So giving it to, kids graduating. I just signed.
Please get out of my house.
Yeah. I just signed about 40 books last night watching the Celtics game. And, it was interesting. That set of books is for interns that are working at an organization this summer. So it's going to, those are rising juniors, rising seniors in college. So that's sort of the group that's really taken this book well. And then the third, group is college and university organizations that, help these students get jobs, prepare their resumes, do mock interviews. So those career centers in the colleges. So it's really been an interesting ride here. It's been out for about 6 weeks, and it's been a lot of fun.
Are you going to send Miami some of those books, given how they performed last night?
Oof.
3 more games to go, Chris. So we'll see how the Celtics finish up.
So Coach Woodard is like, hey, stop picking on the young folks. We got picked on too. My parents were critical of us as boomers and the paths we took in our careers. We now cringe at our kids' approach. I mean, like, yes and no, right? We want them to succeed. And Project Rebuild says, thank you for this. As someone transitioning from the military after 16 years service, I'm looking for my first civilian job. I'm going to grab the book.
Paul, 16 years. That's huge.
Yeah.
But,
thanks,
Mark,
Paul.
I don't think we're picking on anybody. I think it's like, hey, there's differences I'm noticing. Yeah, I don't parent the way that my parents parent. Like, I am not bringing up my kids the way my parents brought me up, but I also couldn't, because it's such a completely different world. The technology, the experiences they have are so far removed from what I experienced. By the time I realized the effect that all this is having on them, it's pretty, they're down the path. So I don't think we're picking on anybody, Coach Woodard.
Yeah, we're not.
We're trying to figure it out.
Yeah, a couple months ago, I was part of a TED Talk, and the topic was, Gen Z, or young professionals, and the perception that they have. And this book was really written around how we debunked the stereotype that they're coming into the workforce. And this generation brings a lot more to the workforce than we ever did. And what I mean by that is they're the generation of empathy, right? They're the generation of technology. They're digital natives. They've grown up on a mobile device where we didn't, right? So all of those skills and energy around diversity and inclusion, they can bring to the workforce. The Gen Xers like me, frankly, we didn't do that when we were getting into workforce 25, 30 years ago. So I truly believe that this cohort and this group can bring a lot of change to the workplace. And, in a few years, I'm sure the statistics, they're going to make up half of the workforce in 2025, 2026, right? So this younger generation are going to be the future leaders of all of these corporations. So the companies also need to adapt to how, this generation performs and communicates and behaves. So it's a two-way street. But what I was trying to do in the book is say, hey, how do you prepare yourself for this new workplace? It's not about, right or wrong. It's just kind of some of the tactics of what you need to do, as well as how to have the right mindset and to make it happen.
I was talking to a 20-year-old who is working at PTC, not too far from, where you are. And maybe I shouldn't have probably outed the company. She was saying she had brought in a whole bunch of interns and younger folk into the work environment. And she'd been raised a certain way to a certain level by her dad. Her dad's a high up dude in the company. And she'd been raised a very certain way. And she said, these people can't send a single email. They can't formulate like 2 sentences in an email, even though they could text all day long with like 8 or 9 characters per text message. And she said, she goes, I never thought about it. It never dawned on me. I just thought everyone can send an email. We don't, because we send text. She said, these people could not. Like you could just as easily said, now fly up to the top of the roof. Have you come across that in your leadership? And how do you guide people on both sides of something like that?
Yeah, great example. So, we see that a lot, right? So my company, Core Access, we build a lot of new hire programs, a lot of onboarding programs for large companies. So if you use the company as an example that you just brought up, what those companies need to do is build some training around email etiquette or, communication skills, things like that. Because to your point, a lot of these young professionals don't necessarily have those skills because they've been texting and doing video, Snapchats, and now TikTok for the last, 5 years. All that said, the company also needs to adapt and be agile as well. So what we're seeing is a lot of these large companies and mid-sized companies bring in tools that communicate in a different way, like Slack or Skype or Microsoft Teams, things like that are quick, texty kind of video messaging, Google Meets, things like that. So I think that if a company can adapt, the young professionals will too, and they'll sort of meet in the middle from a communication perspective.
Hi, Chloe. Chloe.
Hey, Chloe. That's a great point too. On the other side of it, teaching the older generations how to use things like a small slight, Slack and things like that. I don't know how many times on the other side I've had that occasion of, good morning, Chris, comma, new paragraph. This is, this is John. And I want you to know that I was thinking about a project today that maybe we can work on. I know it's John because stupid head's to the left of the stupid thing with the icon in it, So, I mean, it definitely does go both ways.
Yeah, but you're crotchety.
I am. Well, it's ever since that one kid, I said, do you think you could have this done on time? And I got sent eggplant water, and I didn't even know what that meant. I figured, that must be something wrong.
Yeah, the emoji thing's a whole different, communication style. So I'm not sure if I'm there either.
But the problem of personal branding, like you were talking about earlier, that's kind of wrapped up in it. Your communication style is part of your personal brand. And a lot of employees nowadays, whether they're new to the workforce or just fed up with all the BS, they want to bring their whole self to work. And they're kind of done like putting on a suit and pretending to be a different person when they go to the office. Like that's over. So what does your personal brand look like when you're not sanitizing it in that way?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think that question is based upon the culture of the business or the company that you want to work for, right? Some companies are still, flexible when it comes to work-life balance or sort of how you come to work and where you work. Is it virtual? Is it blended? Is it hybrid? What is it? I think, frankly, a lot of our clients are still trying to figure that out. 3 days on site, 2 days off site. But you bring up a good point around personal brands, right? And one of the things that I really want to stress in the book, and we take for granted as an older generation, is, because these young professionals and kids, quote unquote, have been on social media for so long, they don't always know that some of their Instagram or some of their other social media may paint a bad picture of them, not because maybe they have party photos or maybe there's inappropriate, beach photos out there. So if they're going for a job, the hiring manager, the recruiter, guess what they're going to do the first thing they when they see your resume? They're going to check out your social profile. And if it's not buttoned up and clean, you're just going to move right to the side and not move on in the process. And I don't think a lot of these, young students, young professionals necessarily think about that. And those are some of the tactics that I mentioned in the book, because your social brand is incredibly important, not just getting into a company, but then once you get into an organization, you want to build your brand, right? You want to build your network. And LinkedIn, as we all know, is an incredible tool to do that. And in order to advance in your career, you really have to, establish who you are, what you want your persona to be. Certainly you can have different personas, right? Inside work, outside of work. Be authentic. Like, don't pretend to be, carry one and carry two. Like, just, make it sort of who you are, but at the same time, have fun with it. And don't be afraid of stepping out of sort of what you're comfortable with, right? I mean, you are who you are, and you spend a lot of time working. So don't fake it as far as, kind of what your personal brand is. And you have to figure that out as you kind of go along.
If I'd known you went to Babson, I wouldn't have invited you. I went to Bentley.
Uh-oh.
Now we got a problem. This interview is over. Well, it's a different world. Like, I remember going to Bentley, for example, they would do test interviews and practice things. And if your shoes didn't shine at the test interview, they would tell you, like, this is not acceptable. Now, I think it would be fair to say in the startup culture, everybody's seen and experienced, it's so pervasive that a lot of kids kind of rightly figure, I don't have to dress up for things. I don't, the founder of the business came in looking like he just schlepped in off the street. Like, from going to a party last night or something. So how do they feel? Like, what's the right way to feel out the culture of a business that you're not already part of? Like, you don't exactly know what you're walking into yet. So how can you prepare?
Yeah. So and prepare is the P, Chris, in the acronym of PACE, right? So you got to do a lot of research, right? So I feel that if you want to be successful in the workplace, you should do research on the companies that you want to work at, and part of that process is figuring out what are the company's values, what's their culture. You can certainly find out a lot of this from their website, from people that work there through LinkedIn. And if you don't feel that it matches what your personal, traits are, or personal feelings are, or thoughts, don't waste your time. Don't try to go work for a place that you don't think you're going to be a fit from a cultural or value perspective. Like, you want your values to match the company you're going for. So if you're a grungy startup young person that just wants to work in that environment, you probably don't want to go work for Bank of America, for example, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like kind of figure that out, on your own, sort of through your networking and through your research.
Leslie says she always checks out potential hires' social media, not to pass judgment, but just to get insight. So you've been warned, everybody.
And hey, Dean, thanks for showing up. Fred Faulkner had a question I think we kind of handled, which is just basically how much of the onus of communicating better is on Gen Z and millennials, to adapt the older people method and back and forth. I think it's like what you just said, Mark. I think it's a matter of what's the culture? If it's a Slack culture, then you better know how to use Slack. If it's an email culture, maybe you got to live and breathe and formalize sentences. Would that be an accurate way to go after it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, look, every company is different, right? From a structural, cultural, organizational perspective, right? So, and it all starts from the top. We know that from a leadership and development perspective. We do a lot of leadership, executive coaching at a lot of small companies, startups, big brands. And all that said, you want to try to match early in your career the brand that you want to work for, right? If you want to work for a dynamic, sort of progressive company, and that meets your style and your personality, you should go for those jobs. If you want to work in a sort of old school, traditional banking, insurance, process oriented company, maybe that's a fit for someone else who has that type of background. It's all it's like matchmaking, right? It's like that's what recruiters try to do all day long, and talent people. They just try to figure out what person is the best match for the company and the role. But if you're going out for a job yourself, you got to take it upon your own your personal, go to market, I like to call it, and figure out what the right fit is, for you in your career.
I do think there's something to be said for adaptability, like on both sides. I'm at a job now, which I love. It's heavy in Slack, almost no emails. The job I had before this was like just steady emails all day long. And I'm not saying one's better than the other, but one's definitely more like Snapchat and texting than it is long form. So, I mean, there's some adjusting that has to happen on both sides. Leslie says, my nephew recently went to a job interview dressed in very casual clothes, said everyone there dressed the same. I told him the difference. They already had the job. And Dean says, when in doubt, suit up. I always have. I mean, if anything, it like shows that you care. But what about people who are reskilling or moving, out of military service into a different environment? It's not like they don't have experience in the workforce exactly, but the people that they come in and interview with, they could be millennials, right? They could be people younger than them. So what advice do you have for that?
Yeah, I think for career changers or people from the military that are going back into civilian, workforce, I think that they should bring examples and stories to the table of where they were a leader, where they executed on something. And it could be tactics on, a battlefield, or it could be something that they did, within their unit in the military. Everyone's got examples of how they've led or executed on a project or program. And just to have those stories and examples, they all apply to the, quote unquote, civilian workforce. It's not easy, but those are some of the things that I like to coach people on to bring the story around. And I feel that a lot of large companies want to hire, ex-military. They want diversity. They want these folks in the organization because they bring a different perspective than just quote unquote, regular college people that are entering the workforce.
We had that in my wireless telecom. Our field services entity was entirely ex-military guys because the difference was they always got it done. Like they never like messaged back. Well, we had a joke because the Army guys sometimes would be like, they didn't come with enough screws in the package. And the Marines would send back, we got it handled. And we were like, well, everybody said we didn't send enough screws. And they'd show pictures of like duct ties or, blood and hair stuck in a part where it shouldn't be, because they would just do it.
Talk about grit, right? I mean, they have the grit to figure it out. So
they just figured it out. They didn't figure that what we were waiting for was a callback asking for help. Right. But
Holly says one's better than the other, Carrie. I guess you're talking about like my old company versus yes, there's no doubt about it. I have a dynamite job.
I want to use one thing, and we have like 2 or 3 more comments to click on, but I wanted to bring up one highlighter moment because you talked about everybody's personal go-to-market. I think that's a really cool and smart way to put that together, because it's the difference between like an ex-military person showing up for the job interview has to, like you said, bring your stories. They can dress crisp and all that sort of thing. That's not going to be a question then, but you're reminding them those stories are going to matter. You may or may not have told Leslie's nephew what she said. You got to dress up because it's your first time on the job, and this is their first time kind of assessing you, so they're going to be thinking, what's this person or whatever. I think that concept of first go to market works well. Is there any other piece to it that we should know about, or is there anything else thrown into that besides just think of how you're going to make your first appearance?
Yeah, I think, as you guys know, it's the old adage is, first impression's a lasting impression, right? So you want your first impression to be impactful, and you want someone to say, wow, this person, again, perception wise, as we know, is reality. So you want, I don't believe you need to put a suit on. So I don't need to, go against, someone who's in your show. But that said, you want to be polished. You want to be professional. One of the things that I like to coach people on an interview is do a mock interview, right? There's tools that you can use on your laptop or on your phone that you just kind of do a face-to-face interview. You kind of figure out, should you be this close? Should you be this far back? Things like that you want to try to figure out. And I'm not great at it, but I'm a handsy person. But all that said, you want to be able to, think through if a question comes through on a Zoom or whatever, you're thoughtful. You don't just jump at the answer. You kind of take a pause, some of those basic things. The other thing that I will say, one of the tips that I like to say to, some of the students that I speak to is always do a thank you letter or note, I should say, right? Some people take it for granted. I mean, I'm sure you guys love getting quick, hey, nice meeting you guys. Appreciate your time. Looking forward to, but what you see a lot more is a video thank you note, right? So maybe just do a quick selfie video and say, hey, I really would love to learn more about your organization. I enjoyed this conversation. Let me know what else I can do. If you want my, any more information about my background, my stories, my portfolio. To me, if I'm speaking to 10 candidates and that one comes up, like I'm moving that person's forward. That's just me. Someone else might think it's overkill, but I think some creativity using technology, because that's what they're good at, right? They're digital experts. So use some of those technology platforms or tools to kind of make yourself stand out.
Steve Garfield asks, Steve Garfield of stevegarfield.com, can a thank you letter be an email?
Yes.
Cool. Can it be a cookie cake? Because I would really like a cookie cake.
A cookie cake. All right. We have a couple more comments to point out here. Scott Woodard, Coach Woodard, says, it's important to keep in mind that a professional brand management is ongoing throughout one's career. Paul says, I can't talk about some of my stories. When you start a conversation, I'm trained to K in the defense of, yeah, I mean, sure, there's always things you can and can't talk about, but you've got to remember that some of the things that you consider basic every day are also the things that are going to really light you up on somebody else. Like somebody else is going to go, you mean every day you went to PT? You mean every day you went and did the thing? So don't forget that matters too.
Oh, Dean says for Zoom interviews, blurred background, image background, or real background. Now I go 100% real because I'm like,
I want real.
It is what it
is.
is,
Mark?
Again, I'm a real guy, but some people will blur it because it makes them sort of stand out more or come more to the front of the screen. I'm sort of indifferent, but I don't think there's any best practice. I don't think any company is looking at someone and saying, oh, they had a picture in their background or whatever. But look, if you're going for a creative job, I will say, if you're going for a marketing job, a creative job, I'd put maybe something you created in the background, right, as a picture or, a green screen type thing. I think that's kind of fun too, that'll bring out your personality in the conversation. I mean, Carrie, I love your background. You get the, you get the guitar in the back on the wall. You get some cool pictures. You get a wrestler there. That might prompt some conversations. Hey, who's the wrestler that signed that? Like, that opens up the ability to kind of start a dialogue.
I would say that if you put an image up behind you, it can be a little bit janky, like especially if you have long hair or something like that. And you move, like it kind of has to re-find you. It's a teensy bit distracting. So if it's me, I don't know. I don't think I'd go blurred background, but that's just me.
So we've come to the part of the show that is vital and important to the whole ongoing history and love of this institution we know as the Backpack Show. I'll try it.
Oh, and here's our person of the day. Kaboom!
It worked. It worked. So I am going to go with, I had either or.
I have to pick Holly so I can suck up.
Oh my golly. I love it. I'm going to go with Dean Shaw. Dean Shaw is our person of the day. Dean, that entitles you to one free apple. You just got to go to a store, buy the apple, and then it's free. Enjoy it. Eat it all you want. Your person.
Bake it into a tartlet. I shared a tartlet recipe on Twitter just for y'all, for all of our persons of the day. Yeah.
Mark Zides, we have a question we've asked everybody from Sir Mix-a-Lot to Sister Ann Flanagan to Mistress Harley. We will ask
and
you
Mistress Montana, both the mistresses.
And Mistress Montana. I was blanking on Montana's name. What goes in your backpack? This could be something physical. It could be something metaphorical. Carrie, what's a good physical thing you could add to a backpack?
Ooh, extra set of teeth. You just never know.
Extra set of teeth. That's always good. What about something metaphorical? Anything good we should add to a backpack?
Kindness. Definitely kindness.
Oh,
Dean's gifting person of the day to Holly, right?
Very nice.
Congratulations,
Very nice.
Holly.
Author, consultant, and incredible L&D person, Mark Zides. What's going to go in the backpack today?
My iPods.
My iPods or AirPods?
AirPods, sorry. iPods, AirPods. I can't keep
well, they're discontinuing the iPod, so maybe you started stocking.
Oh, are they really? Oh, I got to dig through my junk drawer and find all the old ones. I bet they're worth something now.
They probably are, yeah. My AirPods, I meant to say, not my I can't keep all the eyes straight these days. So
yeah, they've had a branding challenge for years.
The thing is, I've discovered that they're the same size and shape as a chiclet. So if you chew chiclets gum and you tend to drop your AirPods, be very careful.
I find my challenge with them is that the balance is always somewhere else. Like it's always connecting to the device you don't want it to connect with. So that's the problem there. My grandmother was not around for AirPods. She was around for iPods though, and she loved the fact that we could stack that thing full of some of her favorites, which included The Village People, Judas Priest, and also
Korean death metal. Wow.
someone's got to be into it.